the annual Candidates Forum presented by the Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce. My name is John Van Steen. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Directors of the Chamber and will be tonight's moderator. Tonight's forum is entitled Business in the Ossining Community. But before we get started, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank James Trapasso of the Ossining Public Library and his staff for helping to bring this event to fruition. I'd also like to thank the Board of Directors of the Chamber, and specifically the Candidates Forum Committee, for their help and hard work. Lastly, the Chamber would also like to briefly recognize and thank for their service the elected officials from the community who are in attendance. I saw Mayor Geardy here. Thank you, Mayor Geardy. Village trustees John Codman, Rika Levin, Manny Caseta, and Quantel Bazemore. The Ossining Town Supervisor, Dana Levenberg. Ossining Town Council members, Karen DeTore, Liz Feldman, Kim Jeffrey, and Northern Wilshire. The Ossining Town Justices, Nancy Klinkova, Mike Twill, and Mark Riesman. Our County Legislator, Catherine Borgia. The Town of Ossining Highway Supervisor, Michael O'Connor. Our Receiver of Taxes, Gloria Freed, and our Town Clerk, Marianne Roberts. And I know that I have left some people off there, and for that I immediately apologize.
Our Receiver of Taxes, while we love her much, is no longer Gloria Freed.
Okay, I understand that Holly is in that position, and Holly, are you officially our Receiver of Taxes?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. Holly Perlowitz, our Receiver of Taxes. Tonight's discussion is entitled Business in Ossining and the Ossining Community. There will be a series of questions related to the office you're seeking and how it relates to the business community. For those positions which are uncontested, we'll have a brief introduction and question and answer period. For those positions which are contested, we'll have a more extensive question and answer period, and we'll alternate the order of who answers the questions. We'll continue to ask questions as long as time allows. Responses of the candidates will be limited to 1.5 minutes. Should you finish your response prior to the end of your allotted time, that's acceptable and will allow us to ask a greater number of questions during the course of the evening. Our timekeeper this evening will be Johnny Girolamo, again, one of the stalwarts of the Chamber of Commerce, who will indicate to the candidates when he or she has 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, and when the time to answer is over by showing these signs. This is a forum sponsored by the Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce and a positive opportunity for the business community and Ossining community at large to hear your views and vision about business in Ossining in the upcoming years. We're interested in hearing your ideas about the future of Ossining and of business in Ossining. This is not a debate, so please speak of the positives that you bring to the office and avoid the negatives of your opponents. Be specific in your responses. For example, if you make a statement regarding cutting taxes, tell us specifically how you plan to do that. There will be no audience question and answer period, nor will there be any audience participation during the course of the forum. We would like to introduce the candidates for the Ossining Village Board of Trustees. We'd like to introduce the incumbent Quantel Bazemore and Omar Herrera, who's once again running after a hiatus, shall we say. First, for each of you, please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office you seek? And please include your educational and career achievements, as well as specific skills that will enable you to excel in your position. Mr. Bazemore?
Already being stated, my name is Quantel Bazemore. I'm one of the few candidates that work in Ossining and live in Ossining. I've been a lifelong resident here in Ossining. I currently work for Interfaith Council for Action as a program associate. Most of my work is tenant and community related, meeting various people throughout our communities. That is one of my strongest assets of being able to meet many members of our community and our local community. As far as education, I went to Howard University, later matriculated at Purchase College. And as far as what I believe I bring to the table, I think I have a different perspective from most of my board members, as I am somewhat pro-development and I think somewhat visionary about the future of Ossining and what our plans should be for Ossining, which I hope to later display in this conversation.
Mr. Herrera?
Good evening, my name is Omar Herrera. I am a lifelong Ossining resident. I went through all of Ossining's grade schools. I hold a Bachelor's of Arts in Communications and Media from Pace University, as well as theater and public relations training from Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. For the past 10 years, I've been working in county, municipal, and state government, particularly in governmental affairs, constituency services, and currently I work for the office of Majority Leader Catherine Borgia, the County Board of Legislators. I am a downtown Ossining resident, and I look forward to, continuing to getting my hands down and dirty for the people of Ossining.
Mr. Herrera, what do you believe are the most important issues facing the village over the next 2 years, and how would you plan to address them?
Without taking into account the chaos and our own opinions and philosophies of what's going on at the national level, what's great about local government and local community is that at the local level, we actually have the ability and the authority to really change everyone's everyday life. Quality of life issues, your roads, your sidewalks, your garbage, your business community, the ability to know all your police and firemen, your ability to know your teachers, your ability to just call someone and all work together. We need to focus a little bit more on quality of life and kind of rebuilding the trust, particularly within our business community and our branches of government, particularly within the village of Ossining. And understand that throughout many administrations the past 10 years, there's a reason why business owners are frustrated and disillusioned and frustrated. As much as we have made some great strides, there's still a lot of challenges that we face. So I would say buying back the people's trust on how we actually operate, educating people on what the role of Ossining government is, educating people on why we do what we do and how we do it. You guys know that I'm a person that I'm all about assuring your right to know. So if I don't understand it, you may not understand it. I want to make sure that you have an access that is the same level as my access, So I would say rebuilding trust, streamlining access, and working together.
Thank you. Mr. Bazemore, the same question. What do you believe are the most important issues facing the village over the next 2 years, and how would you plan to address them?
I think so far the village has, since I've been on the board, has addressed some major issues, that being quality of life, that being overcrowded housing, beefing up code enforcement, our landlord-tenant council, ensuring that tenants and property owners are responsible for their properties. But I think over the next 2 years, we have an opportunity to make a name for ourselves in the region. Recently, I think it was Westchester Magazine actually named us as one of the hottest hoods. And therefore, I think it's an opportunity that we actually, again, look at our comprehensive plan and look at our zoning, and we have an opportunity to really allow for development and growth and development in which here in Ossining, which other communities probably won't. We are about an hour away from New York City, and that's going to become increasingly important. And the property values of us is going to increasingly go up because we are close to this epic metropolitan financial hub. So I think actually looking at our zoning and our planning is important for the next 2 years.
Mr. Bazemore, what initiatives can we expect from you that would improve the business climate in Ossining over the next few years?
Along myself and my board members, we have constantly, we understand that streamlining is very important, and we have had people in our departments who are looking to make things electronic, scanning, maps. One of our biggest FOIL requests comes from the real estate industry, real estate agents. And so we're working on that currently. And hopefully that'll, when people come, they can have access to that information. And then again, our overall communication. I mean, this is a board effort. So any kind of initiative that I would have will be shared by the board. So we constantly talking about communications, and one of the things that we're going to be rolling out is our website, making sure that is a platform that people can get information, businesses can get information. Again, it is a board effort, so do understand that any initiative I have, that we have.
Mr. Herrera?
I'm going to compile it into communication, but effective communication. We have, last I checked, 47% Latino community that is registered here in Ossining. It's a pretty substantial group that we love and embrace, and I'm actually part of, in addition to many other groups. However, how we communicate has to be at everyone's level. If I throw our village budget to someone and say, hey, read it, tell me what you think, the average Ossining resident's not really going to know what all those line items mean and what all that verbiage means. So, making sure that we are actually breaking down how government works and why it works the way that it does. Making sure that quality of life issues are actually addressed. Making sure that if you call Trustee Omar Herrera, that he actually responds, not the first time, not the 20th time. Making sure that there's accountability in a process. When a business owner does call the village department, they don't hear back for 6 months, but they do when, a lawyer comes or a chamber does a letter, or, we have to stop being so reactive when it comes to our residents and to our business community and work with them together so we don't have to always be reacting, but moving forward together instead of kind of being on the defensive or kind of seeing, he said, she said. Local government affects everyone directly, and it's one of the few opportunities that we have to make sure that the work that we're doing is being understood by everyone at all levels, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a renter, whether you own a home, whether you're Spanish, Black, Puerto Rican, Asian, gay, straight, that you actually understand what's going on and why we're doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, and actually, well, Mr. Herrera, the last time you ran for office, so this question goes back a while, but it's still pertinent today. You were asked the following question. A constant complaint to the Chamber from the business community has to do with the difficulty of the processes involved in obtaining the necessary permits and approvals for property development, particularly for existing properties. Has anything been done to streamline this process, and how do you plan to communicate this to current and prospective businesses?
So when I first ran for office in 2014, that was a concern and a major issue that still exists today. The one thing that I can say pretty confidently is that it's still being addressed. It was addressed while I was on the board. It's still being addressed today. It's a very complex issue because you have institutional culture that has to change. How we operate has to change. How our employees are allowed to operate has to change. What we tolerate has to change. The stuff that you hear about at the grocery store, the stuff that you hear about how hard it was for Miss Smith back there to get her step fixed for her wheelchair, the stuff you hear from the person who tried to work with someone wherever it is. We have to continue working on it. I do feel confident that this current board, and along with me next year, will continue to work for it, but we have to do better. It's very hard. The village has had a lot of challenges and changes of staff for whatever reason. We had to find out a way to continue to push and give people updates as to why certain things are taking longer than they think they should, when in reality, there's a reason why it's taking a little longer than you would like.
Mr. Bazemore, could you particularly talk to the last portion of that question? How do you plan to communicate this to current and prospective businesses?
So part of my job as being a village trustee is I'm one of 5 people, and we have department heads, and I can tell you and I can reassure you that during our monthly reports, these are the things that we ask about. The village has, as Trustee Herrera stated, we have had some challenges, but we're looking to beef up certain areas like our code enforcement and building department, and essentially we're going to be requiring each and every year to find new ways, whether it's using technology to speed up the process. But again, this is government. It does take some time, and it's our job as local elected officials not to necessarily walk down to the building department itself, but to use our channels that we have, using our village manager, making sure that everyone in the village is accountable. That's what we do. We are to be the persons to hold the department heads and our village manager accountable, and that's what we'll continue to do, finding more efficient ways to do the job and make it easier and be customer-centric.
Thank you. Business owners and residents alike complain about the high property tax rates in Ossining and Westchester. Ossining's property taxes are now 4.1% of assessed value, making Ossining the most heavily taxed community in Westchester. And of this, 65% is due to school taxes. The village has no direct control over the school budget, but it does have control over the future demographic trends by the policies that it implements. What policies do you believe the village should institute to reduce this inequity and make Ossining a more desirable place to live?
You know, taxes is a very tax is a very touchy subject, right? We all want lower taxes and we want more commercial properties. And I think that when we talk about strategies, what we're seeing is just from the municipal standpoint, we have a lot of office spaces that have been vacant for some time, and it just seems that what people are asking is for more mixed use. I think eventually, you know, we need to kind of lay out the course of what that looks like for taxes and what kind of growth, when we start doing development, what kind of growth that look like. I think mixed use and increasing residential actually is a way to drive retail. We're at an age where, you know, people are not requiring office space anymore. So I think if we embrace the growth, there will be a pathway to eventually have a more amenable tax structure.
Or I could go on to the next question.
Just very quickly, we're very blessed. When I was in the Department of State, I got to help with the local government efficiency programs. And Ossining, I am proud to say this, when it comes to consolidations and when it comes to sharing services, is a leader that the state should be looking to how to actually operate and share. That I can say confidently and wholeheartedly. The town board, the village board, the departments, the county, the assembly, all these branches of government have worked extremely well throughout the years, whether it be our court system, whether it be our police, whether it be our town and village hall. So, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for both of them that they're always looking for ways to continue working together and save all our taxpayers money. So yeah.
Please discuss the Sing Sing Museum project. And what steps has the village taken to aid in the development of this project, and how do you envision this linking with the rest of the Ossining community?
The Village of Ossining has been very supportive of the Sing Sing Prison Museum. In fact, part of the way that the Sing Sing Prison Museum is going to happen is that the Department of Justice is eventually going to give us the land and to lease. We think that, you know, it's going to bring a lot of people here, and it's been projected that maybe almost 100,000 people will be coming to Ossining. So there's a couple initiatives that we have taken as far as looking at trolleys and circulators to be able to catch that many people coming to Ossining and bring them up uptown to our downtown area. So we've been very supportive, and we're going to continue to be supportive in any way we can.
The Sing Sing Prison Museum project is exciting. I mean, the fact that we have so many stakeholders from all different groups and organizations really shows how serious we are actually assuring this gets done. And from what I've seen in the past couple of years, they've gotten closer and closer and closer and closer. So we kind of have to keep that momentum going and really see how responsibly as a village we could, you know, aid in the development of making this project a reality. I also think, though, that we should also, while we are investing our time and our energy and making sure that that project gets done and is possible, that we also we reach out to other groups and other investors and other options and see you know, what other possibilities are out there in addition to the museum that we could work with our county government and our state government on. The museum's a great first step and it's going to be ongoing, but we want to make sure that you know, we have other projects along line with it.
Kevin Dwarka performed a housing needs assessment for the village of Ossining, and within that assessment he prioritized 8 strategies for the village to consider. Among these were appointment of an economic development specialist to support the village's planning and development director and proactive code enforcement. Which strategies of Mr. Dwarka's will you prioritize for the village?
what stuck out to me the most was the code enforcement in the building department. And I feel that, the village has been working on this already, and I will be very supportive on continuing to find ways to redevelop and give the tools necessary to really address all the concerns of substandard housing, or as we know it, illegal housing, right? Our term has been, and really making sure that that department has the manpower and the resources and all that they need to get their job done. And also continue the conversation about what housing means in Ossining, and assuring that Ossining remains a place where no matter who you are, what you do, how much money you make, that you can continue to live here and be an awesome, Ossining resident and contribute to our big community.
So I can tell you currently right now, the Village of Ossining is looking to fill some of the gaps in the building department. So that's an initiative that's already ongoing. There were several strategies there that was laid out in Kevin Jorgen's report. It's actually budget season now, so whether economic development person will come this budget season or the next season, I think we're still working to flesh that out to see exactly what the needs are. There was also a recommendation to look at parking. The Village of Ossining is going to be looking at parking. I think there's various strategies that we can use for parking, and one of that is making sure that we price parking the right way. And we do have some control of that, so I can actually tell you that this year I will be fighting to make sure that we have some of the right pricing, definitely for our tag parking. And then there was the affordable housing law. I think that's something that I'll be working for this year as well. There's a number of strategies that I think that we will be definitely pushing towards to support.
The Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee report was highly lauded by all members of the village government. Among its recommendations were to hire a downtown manager, a business actuator, explore the feasibility of the downtown development engine, realignment and restriping of Route 9 and reconfiguration of downtown parking, which you just mentioned, including the introduction of a muni-meter system, which have been discussed by the village board, and which are your priorities?
So, somewhat discussed. I mean, I've shared with my colleagues, definitely the multi-paying parking station. I think that's a real capital project. I know when Portchester did it a couple of years ago, it cost about $600,000. White Plains had used the same vendor as well. I think that's an ongoing conversation. That's something that I actually want to see, because as one who not only shops and eats in Ossining and actually goes other places, I think we need to make it convenient for people to park. And I think it's worth the infrastructure. I mean, that is parking is a revenue for the local municipality. And I really think that is something that we really need to focus on. So that's something I'm definitely going to be advocating for, because I think that's one of our missing pieces as we start to look at parking in general.
So what I got from the awesome presentation of Ossining volunteers who spent so much time on this report was, look guys, we spent a lot of hours, we threw a lot at you, but what are items that we can do now? And by now, I mean like 4 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. That yes, we have bigger problems and challenges that we could address, and what stuck out to me was also the parking, really just having a conversation about parking and how we're going to restructure it, if we're going to restructure it, how that looks like. But what stuck out to me was open spaces. What are open spaces that we had that could be reconfigured, reimagined, re-envisioned? I won't go into it now, but there are small little parcels throughout the village, even ones that you would never even consider to put a bench or a chess table or whatever. Then also the village, we're not in the business of real estate, yet we own so much property that we're not really using right now. Yeah, we may rent it right now, we may use it for storage, but there's a lot of property that we're sitting on, and it's a decision that's being made now as to whether or not it's a priority to discuss them now, what needs to be made, done by the village to at least have it ready or make it an option or have a conversation. So I would say that the two main areas that and the comprehensive plan. The first group that has opened up the comprehensive plan and discussed it in a public setting. So keeping that discussion going and seeing what it would look like to reopen it up.
The village recently hired Deborah McDonald as its new village manager. How do you view her role going forward? And what support will the village board give her regarding implementation of many of the recommendations of the DRWC?
Well, since I was a part of the hiring process of Debbie, I think she's doing an excellent job. I think, in general, it's important for the public to understand that our village manager is basically our CEO. She's the person who runs the day-to-day operations. She's the person that if the garbage wasn't picked up on your street, if you come to me, I'm going to just send her an email. And if you have her email, then reach out to her yourself as well. So I think she's gonna play a vital role, and because she's the one who's accountable here in the village of Ossining. And what was the second part of that question?
How do you see her going, the village board regarding implementation of many of the recommendations of the DRWC?
All right, I think actually when it comes to the implementations of the DWRC, it's going to have to start with the board first, right? Because there's some things dealing with policies, there's some things dealing with hiring. So the board first has to make that decision of what they're going to implement, and then if it's the directive of the board, she will be instrumental in actually making those things happen.
So I had the opportunity of meeting our new village manager, Deb or Debbie, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to call her, but I read her resume, I knew what she did before, specifically when it came to economic development, which is an area that we're working so hard to really address and see what it means for our community. I think it's also really important for the village residents to know that, as Quantel said, we need to have a discussion about knowing your role. You know, what is my role as a trustee? What is the role of the village manager? What is the role of the heads of our departments? So ours would be policy and influencing people. Theirs would be operations, right? How do we work together, right? So I'll actually be sending a little email to a bunch of people and kind of helping me to do a chart breaking down kind of like what the balance and structure and separation of powers are and how it works in government. NICOM actually has a similar version, but I look forward to a new village manager. From what I hear, she's been doing great. I just asked for the cooperation of all businesses and residents. This is not a trend of just hiring new CEOs every couple of years. So just bear with us, work with us. We'll be okay.
And our last question, let's talk about the business climate in Ossining. What programs have been initiated in the past year to improve the business climate in downtown Ossining or in all of Ossining? And what initiatives can we expect from you and the board that would improve the business climate in Ossining over the next few years?
One of the things that is, of course, happening in downtown Ossining is, I believe at our downtown redevelopment committee, and actually my colleague right here, or soon-to-be colleague, Omar Herrera, worked very hard on that, is the tree lighting. And that is something that has actually brought many people to the downtown area. I've received compliments left and right saying, you know, downtown Ossining is lit up. And the village also spends a good amount of money actually doing the planters, working on the beautification. And I think that's always going to be a focus of the village government, making sure that our core areas that, you know, look as good as possible. Hopefully cleaning the gum off the street. And again, as always, streamlining and making those permitting processes and communicating to the public will always be a priority of village government. And hopefully, if given a couple of years, we will have used some technology to advance that process, making submissions electronic and things of that nature.
To echo on that, I do believe that the village has made attempts to help our business community and attracting people to visit our downtown, not just with our wells and our lighting, but just overall our events and how we operate and getting the word out for our events and such. I am concerned about the business community and its relationship with the village in that whole climate. You know, I live in downtown Ossining, and I walk in those businesses, and filter comes off, right? So really understanding, you know, why is Mr. Smith still angry about the same issue for the past 4 years or 3 years or 2 years, and we're still now 3 years later we're still at it. I kind of feel like I took a nap and it came back, and I was like, okay, half of it's done, half of it's still here, right? So how do we address that? Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I don't have to go into how last year was with the village, right? So really addressing who we work with, why we work with, making sure that we don't have selective treatment as to who we work with. We're your village board. We work with you whether we like you or not, whether we agree with you or not. And you have, the business community has a seat at this table, whether we want to or not. You are welcome at this table, and we need you.
And then lastly, 2 short status questions from chamber members. One chamber member asks, regarding ETPA, Kevin Clark has stated that the other more broadly applicable policies outlined in this framework should be implemented first. Do you intend to follow his advice?
So there were a number of things recommended. You know, I think regarding ETP or any of the initiatives, the climate of real estate is constantly changing here in the village of Ossining. And with regards to ETPA, you know, we'll see what the public says, right? We'll see what the tenants are saying. You know, ETPA is one of the issues, but it's an important thing that actually keeps residents from being displaced. And you know, if there's a push for ETPA, and I was in support of ETPA last year, and I'll be in support of ETPA this year. That hasn't changed because it's about all our community and all the residents of Ossining, and everybody plays a valuable role. And so I understand Kevin Dorcas' report, but I think number one, I think some of those suggestions can be done more than once, actually at the same time. And I think ETPA is just a part of a larger conversation, particularly when you're taking into account the amount of development that's going on in the village, the kind of housing that's happening in the village.
I would like to end the conversation of last year's discussion about just affordable housing and ETPA, and public hearings were had, discussions were had, and I don't know what happened after that. You know, so we have to just continue the conversation. Personally, I would like to see a vacancy study first before, you know, us looking into any other program that the state offers or county offers, and see what the vacancy study means for Ossining, and let's have a discussion about that. We're a group that always uses facts and experts, so let's continue to do that when it comes to this. That affects people directly. So I would say it would be disingenuous to answer that question until we finish the conversation and push for a vacancy study.
And lastly, another chamber member asks, what's the status of the traffic circle idea of downtown Ossining?
Well, the village board this year is not discussing a traffic circle, and I don't foresee that the roundabout will be in the capital plans for now. There was an EIS, environmental impact statement done with a negative declaration. So at any time that the village government sees fit to do a traffic circle, they can bring it up. But I think if you want to know the status, just look at the budget for the coming year. And I just want to end with this is, you will know a village's priority by looking at its budget. You will know the plans of the village if you look at its budget. So November and December when we release our budget, you will know our plans and our priorities. If it's not reflected in the budget, then it's not a priority for this year.
The dialogue, which is the word I'll use for what happened in the conversation about traffic options at the historic Five Corners, I'm happy it happened because it forced the creation of the Downtown Working Committee, right? It finally gave the chamber an opportunity to really mobilize and get people involved. we get about 4,000 voters in the village of Ossining for an election. The fact that you got even 1,000 or plus to stand up with you and ask questions and really get involved in government again and get out of bed and is huge. Thank you for that. As far as the roundabout, I think we heard loud and clear on both sides that people just wanted to stay in the process. And what I said last time was, when anyone, in that particular case, when the chamber, I'm bringing this up because it was brought up by the sponsoring organization to do a permissive referendum, regardless of whether the required signatures were received, legally you could have still had a referendum vote. You could do it, as the board. So we need to, that kind of just slim down, but it's a very sensitive topic. Bring that up to the board or the business owners, and we have to know what that created a movement in our business community. And we have to get past the us and they. Both sides had moments that were inappropriate and were challenging, but it showed the true colors of how we operate. And no one in this political climate wants to be told what is best for you without you in the process.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you very much to Quantel Bazemore and Omar Herrera. Let's give them a big hand. And we'd like to bring to the table for a moment our receiver of taxes, Holly Krolowitz. How are you this evening, Holly? Holly, please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office you seek? And please include your educational and career achievements as well as specific skills that will enable you to excel in your position.
I'm delighted to, and thank you to the chamber and to everyone who's showed up here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to introduce myself. As John mentioned, my name's Holly Krolowitz, and I was appointed the tax receiver position in July of this year to complete the term of Gloria Freed, who retired in July. So while I'm new to the position, I'm not new to Ossining. I've been here 31 years, and I'm certainly not new to this type of work. To answer your question about my background, I'm a New York State CPA. I have been for more years than I want to disclose to you. I started my career in public accounting working for Deloitte, and later went for a short period of time. I worked for about 3 years for Chase, and then eventually had an over 25-year career with Emigrant Savings Bank. While there, I had many different roles, but the one that I had the most time in was running their residential lending operations area, which has come in very handy in the last several months that I've been here in Ossining, because I know the jargon, the forms that are related to residential loans and the forms and process for property to change hands. I have my undergraduate degree is in accounting. My master's degree is in finance from Fairleigh Dickinson University. I know I went out of state for a short period of time to do that. And while I've been in Ossining, as I mentioned, 31 years, I have always worked. And in the earlier years of my time here in Ossining, I devoted as much time as any working mother could to doing things related to my kids in school. I've raised 3 kids. They've all gone through the Ossining School District and are now grown now. I also, in more recent years, have been the treasurer of the Ossining Microfund. I hope all of you know of this organization because it's a wonderful organization here in our community that provides small loans to Ossining residents that have an emergency. type of financial need. So it's a wonderful organization. I'm very proud to be involved with it as their treasurer. And I'm also on the board of IFCA, as Quantel mentioned earlier, the Interfaith Council for Action, and I'm on their finance committee. So I think all of those things make me qualified, and also I'm very excited to have this role here in our community. I am enjoying very much what I think is very important, and I think that might be your next question. You know, as a
what do you believe are the challenges that will be facing the tax receiver's office over the next few years, and how would you address them?
As you probably know, and if not, I'll explain to you that as a tax receiver, you have very little leeway. It is my job to enforce the law and to make sure everyone pays their taxes on time. So I have no ability to, the law dictates that I can't waive anything or change any taxes, so I really can't do anything about that. But what I can do is make for a very welcoming environment. It is very critical to me that, and it's really my focus in the office, is that any taxpayer that walks in or calls, and not just taxpayers, although you're my focus, we also have a lot to do with title agents and attorneys and other accountants who are calling on behalf of taxpayers, and real estate brokers, to make for a welcoming environment. When they walk in, they get their questions answered, and we help them get, if I can't answer the question, or people in my office can't answer the question, we will help to get them to the right person. I am continuing what Gloria started in terms of trying to communicate via email and sending email alerts. Everyone is busy. And as you probably have recently, all of you know that you pay your school taxes in 2 installments, and people forget, and something arrives in their mailbox and goes on the kitchen table, and children's schoolwork goes on top of it. So these alerts are a way of just making sure that the taxpayers know. So what I think is important is, again, to make for a welcoming environment. I also think obviously accuracy is important, and I care very much about that. And technology. You know, I'm hoping that in a short period of time that we'll have the resources to modernize some of our systems, but until then, I still believe that there's a lot that we can do with our current system. We collaborate a lot with the village, we use similar systems, and to enhance the systems that we use now to just provide better and better information, and making it more available to people.
Great, thank you very much. Many thanks to Howard Porter. On the Democratic Party line. Our next discussion will be with our town candidates. Our town supervisor, Dana Levenberg, and running for town council is Kim Jeffers, and they will be running on the Democratic Party line. Why don't we start with Dana? Please tell us about yourself. We know you're the town supervisor. Just give us a brief on some of your credentials and what you bring to the office you see.
Good evening. Thank you so much, John, and thanks so much to the Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce. I'll thank both Johns. And I'll also thank Tom Campanella for filming this for GoTV. My name is Dana Levenberg. As you mentioned, John, I'm currently town supervisor for the town of Ossining, and I have been for about 1 3/4 years. I moved to Ossining in 1997 with my husband, Stephen Hirsch, and my 2 sons, Caleb and Eli, who both graduated from Ossining High School and were very well served by the schools. I may be a little bit biased because I served on the Ossining School Board for 9 years. and that overlapped with my work as Chief of Staff for Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, and I had an opportunity to learn an awful lot about government at the state level, as well as how we serve people at the local level, and about constituent services, which is critical to all levels of government. I also was proud to serve my community by starting the Ossining Microfund, which you heard a little bit about from Holly Perlowitz, which is now in its 12th year, having loaned over $65,000 to community members who faced one-time obstacles at no interest, and these are small loans, and I'm very proud of that organization, which I co-started with Catherine Borgia, county legislator. I'm also pleased and proud to have run and won for Ossining Town Supervisor in 2015. Over the last 2 years, we have achieved so much while keeping taxes under the tax cap. We've improved our parks and infrastructure. We have collaborated with other public entities and organizations and improved the economic, social, and physical health of our community. And I think we have an awful lot to be proud of in all of that. And I look forward to continuing that good work for all of the people of Ossining and for the region in general.
Thank you. Ms. Jeffrey?
So I started my career in banking for a few years, and I decided that while I appreciated financial information, I did not want to stay in there, and so I went back to school and I became a certified paralegal. So the bulk of my career was spent in law firms. I worked for employment labor law firms where we represented municipalities. I've worked very closely with fire departments and police departments and DPWs on the inside, and also with collective bargaining agreements. So there's a portion of that that lends itself very much towards municipal government as well as the financial part. And then after I took a leave from there, I ended up working for State Senator David Carlucci. I've been with him for almost 5 years. Which surprised me because it was kind of like a blink of an eye. And in that, as the town supervisor has stated, I actually worked with her when she worked for Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, and we worked with different municipalities and constituent issues and municipal issues. And so I believe all of those things have provided me with a background to do what I have been doing for the past almost 4 years, which is being a town council person for the unincorporated town and the town general.
Thank you. What do you believe are the most pressing issues facing the town of Ossining over the next few years, and how would you address them? Ms. Jeff?
I think there's a collective cooperation between both the town of Ossining board and the village of Ossining board, and also in some places the Briarcliff village board, to continue to grow and expand ourselves in many ways. We, as we know, have all stayed under our tax cap. We continually look, as one of our village trustees said, to continue to share services and to expand those services in ways that will, again, as a previous person said, continue the quality of life that we care about. The town supervisor will speak more about open spaces. It seemed it's one of her signature things, but business, shared services, good services, expanding tax base through businesses, and preserving quality life through open spaces and ways that we can work together, I think, are the ways to keep going.
Ms. Levenberg?
Well, I think my colleague really hit all of the main points, but I'll certainly reiterate that I think finding ways to keep Ossining affordable is critical in our near and far future. We look to do that by finding other sources of revenue. We've been spending a lot of time applying for grants to make Ossining even more appealing. And we talked a little bit about open space. My colleague mentioned open space, and we have a number of grants that we've worked on with other municipalities, including the village of Ossining, such as looking at an urban circulator and how could that improve quality of life for everybody in the village of town if we had hop on, hop off trolley service that would get us to all the different commercial districts as well as our residential areas, as well as our waterfront. We've looked at ways to increase bikeability and walkability and to make Ossining a place for ecotourism and as a destination. So we're hoping that we can increase the desire to come here and spend money for people who are coming from out of town, as well as make it easier for people here within our community to get to and from work from some of our transportation hubs. So we're hoping that we can continue on that path, as well as look for ways to make government more efficient by working closely with our other villages, and also looking at things more regionally. And we're looking to make our own government more efficient through attrition and finding different ways to utilize our staff and really evaluating each one of our departments and making sure that we have an agile, responsible government that really continues to meet the needs of the people in terms of services and constituent services in particular, but also does so in a way that it best uses our tax dollars.
Well, you just answered a couple of other questions that I had here.
Trying to get it off. I went over my time? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking your way then.
So what will you do as town supervisor or as town council person to directly affect the ability of the town and village to attract business?
So first, we love to work with our Chamber of Commerce, and we did so most recently applying for the Mayor's Challenge grant, which is something that Bloomberg Philanthropies put out, and we brought the Chamber in as well as a number of other important community stakeholders such as Open Door, and we also brought in Peace Land Use Law Center because they've done a lot of work on developing healthy communities, and downtown redevelopment, our village, and looking for ways to collaborate on making Ossining an innovator. So this is something that we believe is critical in how we move forward and how we bring business to the table, making us a destination. We applied to the Mayor's Challenge for something called an autonomous urban circulator, which is possibly an innovation that's taking place around the country and other communities as a pilot, and we're looking to see if this might be something that's feasible in Ossining. This is just one of many opportunities that we've worked on with the Chamber, and we will continue to work on with our businesses. We're also looking, we had a presentation recently about reimagining North State Road, which is the main commercial hub in the unincorporated part of the town, and finding alternative ways to make North State Road more bikeable, more walkable, and more user-friendly, which would then make it more business-friendly. And we continue to look for efficiencies in government to make our tax rate more competitive, and that's something that we also know will attract businesses. And finally, we try to promote our businesses at every turn. We utilize them for our own events, and we also always look to promote them through our weekly web blasts and any other ways that we have at our concert series and any other ways that we have within our town communication stream.
I will say the town supervisor also implemented a Mind, Body, Spirit initiative in which different businesses come to our open spaces and give free classes and get in community engagement, which is pretty awesome. I also think the boots on the ground and speaking to our existing businesses is extremely important to attracting new businesses. Because if you have a business community that is happy and feels listened to and feels responded to and supported, then that message is going to get out. Most business people, as we all know, have networks and interactions with other people, communities, business owners, and so I think we had started an initiative in the unincorporated town a couple of years ago, and we probably should restart that initiative, which is going to businesses on North State Road and in our area and speaking to every owner and really getting to know who they are and having them get to know who we are. And I will say that I have done that as well also in the village, because we have that connection. And so I think one way to attract business is to speak to our existing businesses and have a relationship with them.
The work of the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee was lauded by all members throughout Ossining government. In what ways do you envision the town working in conjunction with the village to realize some of the recommendations of this committee?
I did follow that, and I did go to a lot of the meetings, but there were, no, I didn't go to those meetings. I went to Kevin Dorker's meetings. I'm not sure I remember offhand exactly what their bullet points of initiatives were, if there's any particular ability for you to kind of throw some of that out there. But I will say in a general, it's a weird connection, right? We are the government for the town of Ossining, but our direct connection is really to the unincorporated town. However, having said that, I work in the village of Ossining, and so I walk around there, and as much as I don't have immediate oversight of what's happening there, I do have a lot of relationships. And so I think continued work together in terms of highlighting things. The Briarcliff Village of Ossining and Town of Ossining did a solar panel initiative. So not only did that get our residents to have better energy, it also brought a business in that was able to expand itself. So I think by keeping those connections, that's one of the ways that we can expand. And if I didn't answer that well, ask me a different one.
So this is how we're collaborating with downtown redevelopment?
Yeah, it's collaborating. We understand that the DRWC was principally a village thing, but in many ways the village and town work in conjunction with each other.
We do.
There are some transportation issues that, for instance, were raised by the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee that would work well with the town. I was wondering if that was on anybody's radar screen.
Well, I don't necessarily know that we're focused on the same kind of parking issues or the same kind of other challenges that the downtown has, because so much of that comes out of planning and zoning, and we don't really have jurisdiction over that in the village. But we do, again, get to look at some of that for North State Road, and we recently completed some zoning changes in the town that were probably took a little bit into account some of the work that the village had been doing by adding artist-led workspaces into our town code for the Crotonville area, and also working closely with businesses and residents to find a happy balance that would work for everybody who lives in the area of Crotonville. And also we work closely with the businesses and try to be as responsive as possible to the businesses on North State Road in terms of how our codes reflect what the needs of the businesses and residents are. So we're always working on finding that balance, and we did work specifically to bring the Downtown Visioning Committee in to that Mayor's Challenge grant, because it was something that we felt would serve both the village and the town, and we'll continue to work on that together as we look for innovative solutions to our municipal challenges.
One chamber member writes, what is your position on the proposed major expansion of the Sunshine Home and other issues being discussed in the greater T-Town area?
So as many of you know, the Sunshine Home is actually in Newcastle. And the Sunshine Home, if anybody's had the opportunity to visit, knows that it serves some of the most needy children in the world, and certainly in New York State. So as far as what the mission is of Sunshine Home, I'm speaking for myself, but I believe that our board is very supportive of the mission of Sunshine Home. And we continue to be supportive of the need to meet for that particular development to meet the needs of the most underserved people. But of course there's a balance and there's an environmental balance that we need to take into account, because as Sunshine is looking to expand, we also understand that has environmental impacts, and we have asked as an involved agency for the town of Newcastle to require a full environmental impact study. We've requested it a number of times, and I don't believe that they had decided to go forward with that, but we still feel that it's critically important for that to be undertaken before the full expansion can go forward.
The revaluation 2 years ago was to bring fairness to the tax system by valuing properties at market value. Oh, I thought that Dana had answered it.
I have this thing about liking to answer my own questions. While as a board we did request an EIS, which is an environmental impact statement, that was quite some time ago and it was rejected. They determined that they would not do so. I don't believe those children are underserved. I think they are definitely, they have health needs. I think there's a difference in, I believe that there's a difference in definition of those two things. But they are, so the issue is with respect to not the expansion in terms of the needs of those children or that there are children who are on waiting lists. The issue is the expansion of the size of that in an area that is not necessarily conducive to that kind of expansion. And what the environmental impacts are with respect to the water sources that are close by or you know, trees or roads. So I think we have some major concerns. But as the town supervisor stated, we have no direct ability to impact on that. And so all we could do is write letters and let people know, but it is what it's going to be based on the Newcastle board's decisions.
Thank you. The revaluation 2 years ago was to bring fairness to the tax system by valuing properties at market value. Yet many homeowners decry this as inequitable, citing among others houses on the Trump Golf Course property that are taxed at a 40% discount to their market value. Can you please explain the issue of the homestead option to us?
Sure. So the state of New York in the 1980s had a whole bunch of condominiums that were going to be built. And there was a decision within the state legislature that there was going to be a difference in how condos were assessed. And rather than them being assessed as houses are based on market value, they are assessed as income-based, which is how businesses are valued. And therefore, it brings a differentiation on how they are valued, and they are assessed less in taxes. When a community, based on state law, does a reassessment, as this community did, it brings up the ability for the municipality to implement homestead, which is the ability to, I don't know you want to stop me because I'm going to explain it, is the ability for that municipality to then implement homestead, which would then provide that the condos are assessed at marketplace value, market rate, thank you. So that is what it is. And there are concerns and issues with respect to that. And we are going to have a town hall on November 14th, in which we are going to have varying people come and discuss this issue who have background and knowledge to then discuss the pros and cons of implementing such a thing.
So my colleague, Councilwoman Jeffrey, did a pretty good job explaining the history. Okay, a great job of explaining the history of homestead, and there are definitely issues with enacting homestead. We did have an opportunity to consider homestead, and the board chose not to consider it in the first year of the revaluation because we felt, I believe that, first of all, that the impact of the revaluation in and of itself was going to be great enough as it was, and then to put homestead on top of that would be detrimental to our community. We also felt that currently it seems that history shows that the commercial rate will actually expand faster than the residential rate increase is. So we're concerned that it makes it untenable in the long run for commercial properties, and we don't want to hurt our commercial districts, and that was key to what went into our decision not to implement Homestead. But as Ms. Jeffrey mentioned, on November 14th, we have lined up some experts to speak a little bit about what implementation of Homestead has looked like in other communities who have done so around New York State, and what the pros and cons are in terms of what we might look at in the long term for Ossining if we were to implement Homestead.
And as a follow-up question to that, the Chamber member writes, the report was presented to you by a group of citizens regarding the unfair assessments resulting from the reevaluation. Can you tell us about this report, and has the town board discussed it? And well, you mentioned that you're having a meeting on November 14th.
I mean, I think that the board has had an opportunity to individually read the report, and we have received a lot of feedback, both pro and con. I would say that if I were to count up the number of pro versus con communications we've received at this point, we definitely have received more people who are opposed to adopting Homestead. So we wanted to make sure that we brought some folks to the community to explain a little bit about what it would really look like and how it has impacted other communities, because we think that that would be the best way to give as many people as much information, as much solid information as possible as they continue to advocate for or against it. And I think then we will have continuing conversations to try to decide what will best serve our community in the long term. I will say that no matter what happens, if the town were ever to decide to adopt Homestead, that would just be one municipal unit that would make that decision. But at that point, the school district and the library and the village would all have to decide if they wanted to implement Homestead. The county could not adopt Homestead because they have not undergone countywide reassessment, which would then require the town to keep two sets of roles. And that would probably also require more employees for the town. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Another chamber member writes, building bridges between the town and local and community groups is as important as balancing the budget. Explain what measures you've taken to improve the relationship between the town and the Ossining Boat Canoe Club.
Okay, well, one of the first orders of business that we had before us with the town and the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club was that there was a license agreement that was up, and the boat club asked us if they could have a longer-term license agreement. So we worked very carefully to craft an agreement that would be respectful of all parties and protective of all parties, and very pleased to say that we were able to successfully negotiate a 5-year license agreement with the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, and we continue to work closely with them on any challenges that come up, and we'll continue to look forward to a healthy relationship with them because we know what an important role the Boat and Canoe Club building, which is a town building on the Ossining waterfront, is for our entire community.
Thank you. And our last question, we understand that New York State has funds for green landmarks, and can you tell us what steps the town is taking?
For green landmarks, okay. I'm not familiar with that particular area of funds for green landmarks, but I will tell you that that Ossining received a $30,000 grant from the Hudson Valley Greenway to look at open space connector bike and pedestrian corridor. So we're hoping that working with the Village of Ossining, the town of Newcastle, as well as the Village of Briarcliff and the town of Yorktown, we can come up with a wonderful plan that will connect up the downtown and the waterfront Ossining all the way over to the North County Trailway. So we have a reason for people to bike and walk from point A to point B and every place in between. And we're looking at making sure that we have almost like a ski map of ways that people can access all of our different wonderful assets, our open space corridors, from all the way over from the Old Croton Aqueduct, the Sing Sing Hill Greenway, to the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway, our downtown, our commercial district and our downtown of Ossining, as well as North State Road, Village of Briarcliff, and then out over to Millwood, the hamlet of Millwood. So we're working very closely also with the County Planning Department, and just as recently as today, we drafted a letter to our county legislator requesting that the work that they're currently doing on Pleasantville Road to repave and expand Pleasantville Road and fix up the curbs, they might, if possible, consider the safety and feasibility of adding a bike lane before they finish the striping on that road. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to collaborate with the county and all of our local villages to make this a destination for ecotourism and also to connect up all of our sites for people to enjoy.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Levenberg. But before we ask up Mr. Rathouse and Ms. Borgia, I have to apologize to Mr. O'Connor. I left you off of the agenda tonight. Would you like to say, I know that you're up for, you're running for the Superintendent of Highways?
Yes. Thank you very much. I'll try to keep it very short. I'm finishing my 28th year holding public office here in the town of Ossining. Thank you. I was a councilman for 16 years, and I've been a highway superintendent for 12. I find being a highway superintendent the most rewarding job anyone could have. I pick that phone up, and I have an old person, a widow or widower. Mr. O'Connor, can you help me? I can't move this or that. And I'll go over there myself, and I'll move a TV or a small refrigerator, whatever it is, to help them get it out. Because these are the people that, they've never asked for anything. They pay their taxes 40, 50, 60 years in some cases, and now they want a small service, and I provide that service to them. But it's important, and if I was up here to make a one-word speech, that word would be infrastructure. And I think we have to pay attention to that. And thank you for the opportunity, and the Chamber, I think, is doing a fantastic job under its current leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Robert Outhouse, Ms. Catherine Borgia. Ms. Borgia is running on the Democratic Party line. Mr. Outhouse is running on the Republican Party line. Ms. Borgia, please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office you seek? And please include your education and career achievements as well as specific skills that will enable you to fulfill your position.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this debate. So I'll start from the beginning. My educational background is I have a bachelor's degree from SUNY Binghamton, Apple Binghamton University, and an MBA from NYU Stern School of Business. I spent 15 years as a marketing professional and PR executive. Subsequent to that, I worked as Assemblywoman Galiff's Chief of Staff, and then I was the town supervisor. While I was working for Assemblywoman Galiff, I also served on the village board for 2 terms. I was the town supervisor also for 2 terms. I'm a small business owner. My ex-husband and I own a real estate business. I did consulting work over the course of my career in public service as well, and recently I've just been licensed as a real estate salesperson, so this past year I've been building that business as well. I also bring a very long history of community service to this job, and I think that understanding the community as a volunteer really helps me to do this job very efficiently. I co-founded with Supervisor Levenberg the Ossining Microfund. I was the PTA president of the Junior League. I was the statewide chair along with Councilwoman Karen DeTore for an advocacy group for domestic violence and women's and children's issues. I was a CCD teacher at St. Augustine's for 10 years. I served on the T-Town Advisory Board. I was a Girl Scout leader. I served as several jobs on the Rotary, including president. I've been a volunteer for IFCA, for the Ossining Food Pantry, for the Ossining Library, for the Open Door Family Medical Center, and I served on the T-Town Advisory Board. And I also was the co-chair for 5 years of the Ossining Communities That Care, which is an organization that seeks to prevent drug use, drinking, smoking, and teen pregnancy in Ossining youth. So I bring a wide depth of community understanding. I think also my professional skills are very helpful in getting things done at the regional county level. And of course, you know, I love to serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Mr. Outhouse?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting this event, and I'd like to thank the incumbent for being here this evening. So I'm a lifelong resident of Westchester County, born in the town of Cortland, graduate of Hendrick Hudson High School, hold a bachelor's degree from Manhattan College in organizational management. I started my volunteering to my community at age 14 in the Peekskill Ambulance Corps Youth Group. I'm a 38-year life member of the Buchanan Engine Company, past two-term fire chief. I served 16 years as the company president, the longest serving president of the company. I currently am the president of the Westchester County Volunteer Firemen's Association. I'm the director of the Hudson Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association, and a committee member for the Firemen's Association of the State of New York pertaining to recruitment and retention of volunteer firefighters across the state. I was a founding member of the Cortland Community Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I currently serve the Croton EMS as an EMT driver. During my years as a volunteer firefighter, I was trained as a fire investigator. And in the county, we organized a new county task force to combat arson. Today it's known as the Cause and Origin Teams, which is comprised of firefighters and police officers. I served the community as a police officer in Westchester County, a decorated police officer for 23 years. I was in the bomb squad for 17 of those years, serving the community, dealing with hazardous devices and threats against our community. I look forward to serving as a county legislator and bringing back the thing I love to do is to serve the people of Westchester. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Outhouse, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing Westchester County over the next few years, and how would you address them?
Well, the first and foremost is the Indian Point closure. Currently, we have two committees, one from the state and one local committee. I've been at several of those committee meetings, and we're just talking about what's going to happen, but I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen. And that reverts back to the filing of the secret. The environmental impact statement is a requirement and should be completed so that the committees and the public can know what we're going to be faced here in the local community, Westchester, Ground Zero, Buchanan, in the town of Cortland.
Ms. Borgia, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing Westchester County over the next few years, and how would you address them?
Thank you. So I do believe that infrastructure, like Michael G., is a very critical issue that we need to work on in Westchester County. As you know, we are an older community. We have a backlog of about $2 billion worth of infrastructure projects that I believe should be fast-tracked so that we can not only get people back to work, but also improve the infrastructure that makes Westchester a more desirable community that helps economic development. I've also, for the past several years, had a housing needs assessment, somewhat similar to, but a little bit broader in scope, to the village's housing needs assessment, which I believe we should try to complete during the 2018 year. That will give us some planning information that can be used at the local municipal level when they're making decisions about what type of housing our changing demographic is going to need. You know, we're very fortunate in Westchester County that we have the longest life expectancy in New York State. However, as people age, they want to age in place and they have new infrastructure needs. I agree with Mr. Outhouse that the closing of Indian Point is going to be a significant concern to the people of Westchester County, and I'm working I hope to pass on Monday a bipartisan resolution that looks at all of the different issues that we're going to face and makes a pretty strong case for why Westchester County deserves resources from the federal and state government to help us, assist us with the economic development, education, and environmental impact of the closure of that plant. I've also been working sort of long-term through the Families Task Force, which I co-chair with Kathy Hallis, the chair of the Child Care Council, to look at our short-term, long-term, sort of blue sky transportation needs in Westchester County, because I think transportation is going to become a more critical issue as our demographic changes, and also is very critical for attracting new businesses. We worked for a very long time at the county board on vetting a development project on the parcel that the community college and the medical school are on, and it's going to be a very exciting new development. But we realize that if we want to have professionals and people of all levels working on the parcel called the North 60, we're going to need some new transportation options for those people.
Ms. Borgia, what is your plan to help the economies of the river towns and to help Ossining?
Sure. Well, of course, Ossining is my home, so I will indeed help Ossining, but I think that you can't really separate necessarily the river towns from the rest of Westchester. So I do think all of these issues are interconnected. I do believe that we need to work on our infrastructure. I do believe we need to work on our economic redevelopment. I think that we've really seen, and the Chamber is to be commended for this, we've really seen the rise of small businesses and how they impact the community in so many multiplier ways. You know, they not only employ people, but they also bring money into the downtown. I was out with some of the town employees yesterday at an event, and it was very nice to see how engaged and alive our beautiful downtown was last evening, and the beautiful lights that the Chamber has sponsored and the Downtown Committee has sponsored. So I think we need to work on infrastructure issues, we need to work on housing issues, we need to work on planning issues, and all of that increases the desirability of the river towns, Ossining, and frankly all of Westchester. So that's where the regional government can really help in the process, because we can provide the sort of the planning resources, and we can also provide the advertising resources of things like participating in a program like the Sing Sing Prison Museum, for example, that attracts people to not only to Ossining but to all of Westchester County.
Thank you. Mr. Outhouse, what is your plan to help the economies of the river towns and Ossining?
As a lifelong resident living up in the Montrose, Cortland area, I lived on the Hudson River all my life. The river towns are most important throughout Westchester County, from Yonkers to Peekskill. If you looked at the redevelopment of the city of Peekskill over the last few years, the river town is booming. You can't get a seat in a restaurant on a Saturday or Sunday night. We need to do that in all the river towns, including Ossining. Ossining has a beautiful waterfront. We need to grow economic development. The infrastructure is a priority. Once you build the economy, you need the infrastructure, you need transportation. As a county legislator, I'm open to help any river town. I'd be open to any town supervisor, village mayor, city mayor, to come and ask me questions. What can we do? What can I do for you? I am a person that will listen. I will get the funding that's needed, if available. I will also assist in getting the state and federal grants that are needed to make this river towns, from the Yonkers all the way up to Peekskill, a thriving place. And Ossining is on the rise, and I hope I can be a part of that and helping Ossining do that. And I'm looking forward to helping all the river towns in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Outhouse, Westchester County is the highest taxed county in the nation. What is your position on this issue? Do you believe the county tax burden can be lowered? What initiatives would you put in place to reach your objectives?
Right now, we have a $1.8 million budget. The county taxes remain flat. I propose to keep the taxes as flat as they can be while maintaining essential services. In the future, with the closure of Indian Point, and that'll be the telltale sign of where this direction of this county is going to be going in the next few years. So, flat taxes today, with the closure of probably one of the worst economic disasters to hit
May I have your
this
attention,
county's
please?
history.
The library will be closing in a half hour. Please note that the computers will be shutting down in about 15 minutes. Please save all your work.
It's an automatic announcement, unfortunately.
I thought it was a fire alarm.
Please continue.
Again, I want to reiterate that, the county government is going to have to be a watchdog over what's going to happen here. Again, I'm going to stress that we don't know the effects of what's going to happen in Indian Point. So our future, economically and tax-wise in the county, is going to be held at burden until we see the effects.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia?
So the county government is actually $1.8 billion, and the discretionary part that we have control over that's not a pass-through for state and federal programs is about $548 million. We do have an opportunity to lower taxes with a lot of creativity and political courage if we are able to work with local municipalities and school districts. I think that there's a state program that looks at that required us to have a plan for how we can do shared services, and the county did put together a plan that talked about some what I would call low-hanging fruit. But I think here in the town and village of Ossining, we've seen really good examples of how the sharing of services and consolidation of services and good operation does actually reduce tax burden. So the tax burden is comprised of your school taxes, your municipal taxes, and the county taxes are typically about 18%, 18 to 20% of your tax burden. So what can happen, though, with the regional government taking over some of the services for local governments, which is what some of the local town supervisors and mayors asked us to do, might increase the portion of the circle that is your tax burden, but would reduce the overall tax burden on homeowners. And I think that should be our goal versus necessarily saying, well, we're just concerned about our specific portion of it. I think when I was the town supervisor, we saw 2 major consolidations which actually did result in 2 tax decreases in the town of Ossining. So there is an opportunity if the county is willing to take a leadership role in this matter to actually shrink the overall tax burden.
Well, regarding the county budget,
Sure.
Describe which issues you believe present the biggest problems to the county and how you might attempt to solve these
Well, I don't know that I would call them problems. I think that we are charged with providing services. I don't know that all of the financial decisions that have been made over the past 8 years have been wise ones, because some of the times that we have sought to close down programs, the portion that the county actually paid for through the county tax levy was small, so our residents are receiving fewer services that are actually paid for by state and federal tax dollars, which of course we pay into as Westchester County residents. We pay state taxes and we pay federal taxes, so I don't know if all of those decisions were wise. What I'm saying is you do have an opportunity to look at things like flood mitigation. That's the thing that impacts a lot of communities. We have a lot of riverfront communities and waterfront communities in the South Shore and the river towns. There's an opportunity to say to local municipalities, you don't have to do all these big projects on your own. They can be done at the regional level. I think there's also an opportunity, speaking of infrastructure, for the county to do a regional sewer repair project. Every municipality faces sewer main breaks. Our systems are old. There is an opportunity to lower the overall cost of these projects by using economies of scale. So I think that's where the biggest opportunity lies, is to do government more efficiently, to do things on a regional level that helps the local municipalities, and working very cooperatively, both down at the local municipal level and up at the state and federal level.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia.
Thank you.
Mr. Outhouse, same question regarding the county budget. Describe the issues that you believe present the biggest problems to the county and how you might attempt to solve these issues.
Well, again, infrastructure is a big portion. The incumbent mentioned the sewer water district issues of those infrastructures. We have to reach out to the region. We have to reach out to the state to help us with our smaller communities, along with the county. I was very fortunate in my 38 years to reach out to the state in all levels of the Senate and the Assembly to get bills passed in the fire service. I'd be more than willing to go to bat for any municipality for grants and consolidation of services, if need be, to assist that in the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Routhouse, Ossining needs to attract businesses to the area. What can you do as a county legislator to directly affect the ability of the town and village to attract businesses?
Attracting businesses is very important of economic growth here in the village of Ossining and throughout the district. What I would propose is to any type of funding that I could get from the county into marketing Ossining to be a place to come and to thrive its businesses and cause that growth to occur here locally. That's probably it. Just an open mind. You know, I'm not a sitting legislator right now. I don't know what I could get, but I can tell you if the mayor or the town supervisor came to me, I'm all ears, I'm a good listener, and I'm a good fighter. Thank you.
Ms. Borgia? Ossining needs to attract businesses to the area. What can you do as county legislator to directly affect the ability of the town and village to attract businesses?
So I think there's sort of a two-pronged answer, the front office activities and the back office activities. I think really a part of attracting businesses is to make the communities attractive. So I think working to make sure that our infrastructure is repaired, making sure that our housing needs are met, that we have attractive places for people to live, that we work on things like providing housing at various levels, which is something that county partners with the local municipalities to do, and also to make sure that we have transportation opportunities for people who want to work in this community. For a long time, Ossining has moved towards becoming, to increasing our transit-oriented development. I think there's an opportunity to increase that work so that there's more facilitation of economic development, people coming into the municipality. I've been working for a number of years with the Sing Sing Prison Museum Committee, for example. The county has a significant role in that. I also had a significant role when I was Assemblywoman Gale's chief of staff as well as the town supervisor. So I think projects like that are big scale projects that attract people into the community for tourism does also increase the economic development of the community. And then the front office piece, I think, is stuff that I have already been doing, which is to hold forums, to work with the chambers, and to make sure that at a county-wide level we're doing a good job marketing Westchester County, marketing Ossining. I was very sad to see that some of our tourism dollars were restricted in the last budget, because I think actually our Director of Tourism, Natasha Caputo, is a wonderful resource for all the local municipalities. So back office, front office.
Ms. Borgia, what is your position on the proposed major expansion of the Sunshine Home and other issues being discussed in the greater T-Town area?
Yeah, so you heard a good exposition of what the situation is. I've been working with residents in the T-Town area as a constituent services. I do want to shout out to Omar Herrera, who I know you've seen as a candidate, but who is my legislative aide and does a tremendous job in addressing constituent issues. So we have convened a couple of meetings. We have met with some of the neighbors in the area. We are also currently working with the Board of Health to look at some of the water issues that they have raised. And we intend to convene a meeting in one of our municipal buildings, either my office or perhaps Town or Village Hall, to discuss some of the expansion of the Hudson Institute. There's some other questions that need to be worked out with that respect to that facility. I do believe that the county has an advocacy role to make sure that all the environmental impact statements are done and done properly. I think it's a little bit politically naive to say that an expansion of a facility of the size that they're promoting would not have economic impacts in a region, that greater T-Town region, which is very sensitive economically. And I think we need to exert some facilitation, I'll say. You know, there's a lot of decisions that get made at the local level, but oftentimes when someone at the county level brings people together to a table, there's compromises to be made, and I think I'm hopeful that we are trying to plan a meeting in the next couple of weeks with respect to the Hudson Institute, and I'm hopeful that that can set the stage for some collaborative work with the stakeholder organizations, the local municipalities, the facilities themselves, and the neighborhood and their concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Roundhouse, same question. What is your position on the proposed major expansion of the Sunshine Home and other issues being discussed in the greater T-Town area?
Again, it was very well mentioned before. I would be very open-minded to their expansion as long as all the necessary requirements are filed, the SECRA, the environmental impact. It's certainly a need. It is the largest facility in special needs in the state. I would be open-minded and to have meetings with them and the community, since it's a sensitive area, to see whether or not it's something that should happen, or maybe it shouldn't happen. But I'd be, again, open-minded as long as they file all the necessary paperwork and the infrastructure can hold the expansion.
Thank you. We both touched on this subject before, but the Indian Point closure will cause the loss of jobs as well as the market loss in tax revenues in a major area of your legislative district. What are your plans to address these problems? Mr. Roundhouse?
First and foremost, there's been statements made that we could save 1,000 jobs in Indian Point. Grew up there all my life. I know a lot of people that work there. There are special people. There are retired Navy, retired Army personnel, well-trained in nuclear plant operation, plant operators. Those plant operators are going to have to leave to find another job because that's their career. They're not going to stick around to wait for the decommission of the plant, taking the buildings down and get work there. They're going to have to leave. Saving 1,000 jobs, if that's going to happen, in my estimation, is that plant's not going to close anytime soon. The 25% of electric that has been proposed to be brought down to subsidize the loss of Indian Point is now starting to diminish. And it's my understanding that that agreement was made to close the plant if they could get that 25%. Right now, from what I hear from the meetings, it's looking more difficult to find that 25%. Bringing power down from Canada means loss of New York jobs. We don't want to lose jobs in New York. So the Indian Point closure, when it affects the employees, there's probably about maybe 300 to 400 that live just in the area out of those 1,000. So we are looking at a problem, and Johnny said that's it, but I'm going to tell you that I do believe that we're not going to be able to save 1,000 jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia, same question.
Would you repeat the question?
Yeah, the Indian Point closure will cause the loss of jobs as well as the market loss in tax revenues in an area of your legislature district. What are your plans to address these problems?
So some of the things I've already spoken about include, I am working on the state task force along with my colleague John Testa, who represents the physical area of the plant, and I represent the majority of the area surrounding the plant. I think that the most significant thing that we can do with respect to economic loss and job loss is to make sure that we work on an individual basis, which the state has committed to do, to find new areas for these individuals to work. It is true that many of these people have very specialized fields of expertise. We do have other nuclear power plants in New York State that New York State taxpayer dollars are keeping open, and we certainly want anyone who wishes to continue in the field of being a specified nuclear operator to be able to do that in New York State should they want to. However, I think it's more important to create opportunities that maybe are not specifically what they have been doing at the nuclear power plant in perhaps other agencies such as NICA, which is also a power generation facility that is in the local area, because I would really like to keep people who have been working at the nuclear power plant in the area, because obviously it's their homes, and also they are, very good, solid tax-paying citizens as well as consumers in the area. So I've been working very hard with the local unions as well as several other stakeholders to craft this resolution that I spoke about before that really talks about the specifics of the kinds of services we'd like to see all the employees at Indian Point provide. Entergy has said that they will find a place for everyone who wishes to stay in the company.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 10 minutes. If you have any items you wish to check out, please bring them to the circulation desk now. The library will be open tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.
However, there will not be in the region, and also we have to think about all of the consultant employees who work at the Indian Point Power Facility.
Thank you. And we apologize, of course, for the interruption. Ms. Borgia, the controversy surrounding the immigration issue and the county's role has been a hot topic this year. Please describe your position and how the county may best deal with this issue.
Sure. So at the beginning of the year, I looked at some recommendations that were being made by New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman about how, with the changing and somewhat chaotic nature of the change of federal immigration policies, how best that local municipalities can work collaboratively with state and federal agencies that they need to work with, while at the same time preserving the rights of the immigrant population in their communities, as well as providing public safety. Because we know that when people are afraid to deal with local law enforcement, that everyone is less safe. If people are afraid to report a crime, that the person who has committed that crime goes on to commit other types of crimes. So I introduced the Immigration Protection Act. We worked very hard with about 300 pro bono hours of immigration lawyers and other types of attorneys who helped us craft a bill that would be completely in line with all federal immigration policies, as well as preserving the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights of everyone who lives in Westchester County, as well as providing very clear guidelines for any employee who interacts with someone who might have an undocumented status, so that they know exactly what they should do. It provides every single provision to allow for collaborative cooperation with any kind of law enforcement official, both at the local level as well as the state and federal level. And the bill, I think, is to really provide clarity. I was very happy after the measure passed with bipartisan support. The county executive vetoed it. The legislature was 1 vote shy of being able to override the veto. But subsequent to that, I've had a lot of conversations with some of our local law enforcement organizations, including the PBA, who has endorsed me, to make sure that we go through the legislation again, look at if there's any areas of concern for any of our excellent law enforcement officials at the county, that we're addressing those areas of concern. And really, I think that we've had such broad support from the community on this piece of legislation that it's worth giving it another shot, giving it a refresher, making sure we've addressed everyone's issues. Thank you.
Mr. Outhouse, the controversy surrounding the immigration issue and the county's role has been a hot topic this year. Please describe your position and how the county may best deal with this issue.
Well, first and foremost, I don't think we need an Immigration Protection Act. And if we did, I'd like to see the facts and the figures of the complaints that were made by the immigrants that are being wronged in Westchester County. Secondly, if we had gotten those and the board was able to look at that, I believe maybe we could have made a decision of, wow, we've got all these complaints, but now we have to do something. But I don't see that out there. I've been a police officer for 23 years. Nobody had to tell me how to speak to anybody, nor did I speak to anybody in a manner which was degrading. I was allowed to ask questions, because a rapport with a person is how you get to know them. In a few minutes, you have to make a decision whether they're a friend or a foe. Those things that a police officer has to deal with on the street with our immigrant population. There was never a time I was told to go find an illegal immigrant, ever. What happens is, plain and simple, when an illegal immigrant breaks the law, they have to go to the criminal justice system. And once they reach that system, when they get processed at headquarters, there's certain questions that have to be asked of them. It's the process. It's the same process we go through as citizens. There should be no other rights given to them, and they should follow our laws. And once you become undocumented and you get arrested and you go to the county jail, it really goes to a different level. Not my level. It goes to a state and a federal level. And if the Department of Homeland Security wants an individual that's undocumented, then we should cooperate. It's the law. It's the law of the land. And that's what we're here to follow, law and order. I understand there are issues, and I think that working with the police and community policing for everyone, we can get through this without any other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roundhouse, please give us your views on the airport privatization.
I was able to work at the airport for 3 years of my career. It's a beautiful airport prior to 9/11. 9/11 came, and then we had extra security placed at the airport. TSA, and I had the opportunity to train TSA before they reopened that airport with TSA on the searching for explosive devices. I trained those individuals there at the airport. First and foremost, I didn't see a for sale sign on the airport just recently. I don't think the airport's for sale. I think what we're looking at is a revenue to come back to the county to use. There's millions of dollars stashed away at the airport that cannot be used for anything other than the airport. And if we privatize, which I've seen 3 or 4 management companies manage the airport in my career there at the county airport. So right now, the airport is being run by a private company. So I think it would be something that I would be open-minded to. I haven't seen or heard any other pertinent deals regarding the airport, just what you hear in the paper and what you see in the papers. But I'd be open to look at that privatization and see whether or not we could use those funds to put into the county budget for infrastructure changes and family programs. So I'll be open to that.
Ms. Borgia, please give us your views on the airport privatization.
Sure. So at the end of the budget, at the end of the year last year, when we were being presented with the 2017 budget, the county executive presented us with a deal that he had crafted with a company called Oak Tree. The deal proposed to give a 40-year lease to Oak Tree for management of the airport. We do currently have a private operator who we have direct control over, and the county makes all decisions regarding how the airport is managed. This proposal that came before us last year ceded that level of control. It was part of a pilot program at the federal government that started during the Clinton years that allowed for municipalities to use dedicated funds for the airport, funds that are generated at the airport that are typically used for maintenance and the environmental sensitivity of our county airport, and for making sure that there's safety and concerns that things like policing are covered using airport funds. It's a lockbox. So this pilot program allows you to basically take the funds from that lockbox and apply it to your operating budget. It's basically a one-shot. The deal that we were presented at the time allowed us to would have allowed us to fill a $50 million gap in the 2017 budget, which still exists incidentally, and to use $15 million of the deal for that, like, sort of stopgap, for like a whole, finger in the dam. Unfortunately, the remaining years of that deal, for the first 5 years after the first year, the deal was basically revenue neutral. The county would receive $5 million. Unfortunately, in the remaining years of that deal, the county would be at a loss because of the operational costs that we would still be responsible for, and we would only be reimbursed for 2 years. So the deal that was presented to us, I think, was reckless and financially imprudent, and that is why, in a bipartisan basis, the Westchester County Board of Legislators rejected it. Now, we are in the RFP process. It's very difficult to talk about deals that we haven't seen yet because no operator has been chosen, but I do think it's such an environmentally sensitive area, and it is a very nice airport, nice feature to have, but we really do have to make sure that this is done in a manner that is fiscally responsible and does not allow that airport to expand, because the neighborhood, the traffic, the environmental issues around that site are quite enormous, and you really have to think about the very long-term implications. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia, reports are circulating that the county is borrowing millions of dollars each year for normal operating and payroll-related expenses, such as pension contributions, as a means to keep the tax rate low. Do you approve this method, and how have you or will you vote on this issue?
So I have voted for some of the borrowing for our tax certiorieries, and part of the reason that I have done that is because it is very difficult for the county, who does not make the decisions about what deals the tax certs will be given to businesses, but we have a very small portion of the refund. So I have it as a compromise measure with my Republican colleagues, voted for some of the tax cert borrowings. What I have not voted for, and why I have not voted for the budget in the past several years, is that we are borrowing for a lot of our operating expenses that good budget practices tell us should not be borrowed for. You know, you can borrow to replace equipment, you can borrow to pay your pension obligations, but that money comes due, and it comes due with interest. So it's a kick the can down the road kind of budgeting process that taxpayers will have to pay off in the long run. So that's why I think that those practices, plus the one-shot practices like the airport deal and selling off of county property, I think are going to create a huge burden for us, for Westchester County taxpayers in the future, which is why I would be more in favor of doing the types of consolidation, shared services, and management practices that I think will serve the taxpayers better.
Thank you. Mr. Roundhouse, same question. Reports are circulating that the county is borrowing millions of dollars each year for normal operating and payroll-related expenses, such as pension contributions, as a means to keep the tax rates low. Do you approve of this method, and how will you vote on this issue?
Right now, I'm not a sitting legislator. I'm not privy to all that information that comes across, but I will tell you as a legislator, I will carefully review those items and to make sure that we're not borrowing that's going to cost down the road. Consolidation of services, as mentioned before, is one way to reduce that from happening. But again, I'm not a sitting legislator. I don't know all the ins and outs of those issues currently, but I will tell you that I will be open-minded. I will be looking at it, and if it will cost us money down the road, I will carefully choose whether or not it's a good thing for the county or not.
Thank you. Mr. Roundhouse, the leading cause of death for adults under age 55 in America is opioid addiction. Westchester County is not immune to this epidemic. How do you believe our county can best address this issue?
This has been a very strong issue of mine. Living in the Cortland area in the Henricotta School District, we've lost 19 children over the last 4 years. Some of my daughter's friends, some of my wife and I's, parents, daughters, and sons. There's a problem here. First, it's related to the pharmaceuticals. We start to see that starting to happen now. I think more effort on the federal level to reduce the amount of opioids given to the from the pharmaceutical companies to the drugstores, and cutting back on the prescriptions that the doctors are writing. That's a start. Foremost, it's education and prevention that we need to do. You know, we have a DARE program that started, and I thought it was a very good program. But as years went on, it seems like we stopped that program, we cut it off, and we didn't finish it. And I think now we have to finish it. We have to educate not only just our children in school, but even the adults have to be educated. We have to be educated on the painkillers and what they're doing to society as a whole. I also believe that there's a mental health component that goes along with this opioid use. And I think we have to get our mental health involved and get this prevention education. The county executive started Project Worthy, which brings in the consolidation of most county departments and school districts, mental health, probation, public safety, I think is a great program. I would love to play more part of that program. I think it's going to be a well-worthy cause here.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia, the leading cause of death for adults under age 55 in America is opioid addiction. Westchester County is not immune to this epidemic. How do you believe our county can best address this issue?
So I'm going to start off with a little bit of bad news, John, which is that our senior Programs and Services Commissioner came in to speak to us a couple of months ago about this issue and said actually that the rise of opioid addiction among senior citizens has actually spiked in Westchester County, a significant percentage. I do think that, though it does hit young adults, I also have had personal experience, including one young woman in Portland who was my daughter's age and my student in St. Augustine's religious education, so that was a particularly devastating thing for me. I mentioned that I worked for many years with the Ossining Communities That Care, which is a drug prevention program. It's a little bit more comprehensive than the DARE program. The DARE program is good, but it targets 5th grade children, and we saw that we needed to go younger for certain reasons and older for other reasons with respect to educating our youth about the dangers of using drugs. The county, unfortunately, has really reduced its mental health services, and I think that that's an area where we should expand in order to make sure that we are catching people who are using opioids. But specifically, under the leadership of my colleague, Mary Jane Shimsky, we have recently participated in the opioid lawsuit, which is being handled by many states and counties around the nation, to actually look at the pharmaceutical companies and look at their culpability at pushing opioids. My mother had a pretty devastating car accident in the spring of 2016, and her doctor sent her home with 100 painkillers, 100. So she lives very close to my sister, who has 2 teenage children, and she was very, very, very nervous about what to do with that medication because she did not need that much. So that is a situation where we have promoted, again under the leadership of my colleague Mary Jane Shimsky, the opioid drug take-back bill, which would require pharmacies that prescribe these medications to take them back. We've also, at the county level, started in Ossining, was one of the first communities, have our police departments have a drug take-back where you can go into the police department, you don't have to interact with anyone, stick it in the little bin, and get rid of medication that you don't need. Because most people who get addicted to opioids do so because they are raiding their parents' or grandparents' medicine cabinets.
Ms. Borgia, the chamber member asks, in business, CEOs and CFOs are held accountable for proper reporting of the company's financial status and soundness to its shareholders. Should public officials be held to an even higher standard of proper reporting and disclosures? In light of recent proofs established by the New York State Board of Elections, should public officials be held accountable to all of those, or for all of those contributing to their campaigns to keep fairness and justice within our elections?
Sure, of course. There was an issue with my campaign reporting. It was a problem. It was resolved. I think that you might be referring to a particular contribution that was made by the Plumbers and Steamfitters Union that was made accidentally to my campaign when it should have been made to the Democratic Majority Action Committee in 2015. I know that there's been some allegations. I want to show you that that check was not cashed. It was never cashed because it was written to the wrong committee. This is the invitation that it was sent to. You can clearly say it's for Democratic Majority Action Committee. This is the check. It is uncashed. That is a reporting error that the reporting body, the union, will have to correct. But of course, you know, there's the system of reporting is, you know, you have to match up the reports that one organization makes with the reports of another organization, and this was an error that happened with respect to that. But of course I do believe that people should be held to a high standard. I'm happy to report that my filings were all up to date. I'm working with some professionals and the Board of Elections to make sure that they remain up to date, and you know, that's an issue that existed in my campaign and has been resolved.
Great, thank you. Mr. Roundhouse, the same question. In business, CEOs and CFOs are held accountable for proper reporting of the company's financial status and soundness to its shareholders. Should public officials be held to an even higher standard of proper reporting and disclosures? And in light of recent proofs established by the New York State Board of Elections, should public officials be held accountable to all those, or for all those contributing to their campaigns to keep fairness and justice within the system?
Absolutely. It's about accountability and transparency. CEOs are held responsible for financial mistakes that happen, or errors, or actually just not doing it. Ms. Borgia brought up the check that was in question. That's one check. We're talking about going back to 2013, another election cycle here, and over 22 filings not done. Now all of a sudden, Ms. Borgia, since I made it an issue, has gone back and tried to remedy the situation. The situation should have never occurred. I'm a first-time candidate. I wanted to make sure that my filings are correct and on the money, and when they're due, they're due. And if I make an error, I'll correct that error, but not in 22 cycles.
Thank you. A chamber member, Mr. Outhouse, a chamber member asks, what steps have you taken so far, and what steps do you plan to take when in office to help us combat climate change, specifically with regard to reducing our carbon footprint?
There's a lot we can do to reduce the carbon footprint. First and foremost, I think all government agencies should take a look at their buildings and their structures by reducing the amount of energy they use, by getting automatic thermostats, light sensors for all their lightings, so when no one's in the room, the lights goes off. The reduction of energy of all the major corporations will help reduce the amount of energy needed from those power plants that are producing them, and thus, reducing the carbon footprint. We can do that at home. The big influx in solar power in our homes. People's meters are turning back. The power company is now paying them. That's great, and we need more of that. We need to get our government, we need to get our businesses, our large businesses that use a lot of electric to do the same. And I think when we can get that to happen, we'll be able to do that. On a final note, when we are losing Indian Point, there's power plants that are going to have to make up that power. The carbon footprint and the state's goal of being 50% green is not going to happen with the emissions that are going to be put back into the air. So we need to look at that, we need to look at that closer, and I think that we can all do our share as even residents, and by looking at solar and putting those thermostats in the house. I have mine in, and they work great.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia, a chamber member asks, what steps have you taken so far, and what steps do you plan to take when in office to help us combat climate change, specifically with regard to reducing our carbon footprint?
So of course this was one of my main issues when I served both on the village board and as the town supervisor. In that capacity, I founded Green Ossining, which as you know has been very active in this community in helping residents and businesses reduce their carbon footprints. While I was the town supervisor, I also served on the county's global warming task force, which was spearheaded by our former county executive. Unfortunately, in the past 8 years, that report has been put on the shelf and in fact is no longer even available on the county website, which is a shame because it represented the work of about 40 professionals in the government, in the business, and in the environmental community. There are some things that we can do. I certainly did the energy audit of the town of Ossining so we could implement savings in the municipality. I think those things could happen at the county level too. I spearheaded a project to replace all of our light bulbs in all of our county facilities and on our highways with LED lighting. That has happened over the course of the past 5 years. One of my first pieces of legislation was actually to reduce the requirements for getting licensed to be a solar operator. If you were already a plumber or electrician, those additional requirements to become a solar operator were a little bit onerous, so we were able to reduce that to encourage solar operators in the plan. But there's much, much, much more to be done. My caucus has had several pieces of legislation, including electric vehicles, the use of other types of energy sources. that I think we can do in the future with more leadership. I do have a little bit of good news though. At the state level, the governor has been working for several years on what they call the REV, Reforming the Energy Vision, and the New York Independent Systems Operators at our last state task force meeting on Indian Point did give us a report that said several of the projects that are already underway in construction or being permitted are going to provide a significant amount of electricity for the downstate region. One of the problems that we have in New York State is we have a ton of ability to generate electricity because we have a lot of hydropower. The problem is we have a bottleneck getting it to the downstate. So some of the projects that the state are working on is to increase the ability to transmit electricity downstate, and those do seem to be working well. Obviously, we have to keep on top of them, make sure that they happen, certainly make sure that they happen before New York Independent System Operators will authorize the closure of Indian Point. But I do think we are on the right road.
Thank you. And our last question, Ms. Borgia. On November 7th, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hope are in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and persuade the electorate to vote for you?
Well, I think I have served this community for a long time, and I hope that the many people that I've helped in constituent services and the many different offices that I've held, the work that I've done as a volunteer, as well as my work as a legislator, will persuade people to give me another 2 years in this job, because I do feel that that we've done excellent work at the county level, that there's a lot of work to be done, there's a lot of opportunities here. I believe very strongly in Ossining and in all the communities of Legislative District 9, and I am looking forward to serving the people of this district for another 2 years. I think that for Westchester County, the best is yet to come, so I'm hoping that people will give me opportunity to serve them for an additional 2 years.
Thank you. And Mr. Rathouse, on November 7th, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hope are in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and will persuade the electorate to vote for you?
The opponent has been an elected official here in the Ossining area for over 10 years, county legislator for 6 years, vying for her 4th term. Change is in the works. We need a change here. We need a change. We need a change of blood. We need enthusiasm. We need to work bipartisanly with the Board of Legislators. I'm the guy to do that. I will get it done. I will listen to the people of the village and the town of Ossining, the city of Peekskill, the village of Croton, and Briarcliff Manor. I vow to work with the mayors of those villages and the town supervisors. I think that we can do better. I think we need better representation here in District 9. I am very glad to have been asked to jump into this race, and I've loved every minute of it. I love knocking on the doors and talking to the people and hearing exactly what's going on here in District 9. So I hope they vote for me. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Borgia. Thank you, Mr. Rathouse. And that concludes our evening. We'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we'd like to remind everyone to vote on election day.